Hello, it's Angie. Today we're going to talk about a decision that doesn't feel dramatic, it won't trend on social media, and it won't double your money overnight. It won't require picking a brilliant stock, but over 30 years it can quietly snowball. Not because of higher returns, because of structure. And if you understand this early, especially if you're under 50, you give yourself something extremely powerful. So let me explain what I mean by structure. When I say structure, I mean the legal and tax framework that determines how your money is treated, regardless of how well it performs. Structure includes tax allowances, tax bands, dividend and capital gains rules, ISA wrappers, reporting requirements, annual resets. Structure is not the investment, it's the environment that the investment sits in. Most people focus on what to buy, when to buy, and very few focus on whether it compounds inside friction or outside friction. And that decision, asset location, is what snowballs over time. In the 2025-26 tax year, every UK adult receives ISA allowances of £20,000 for the year. It's annual. Is there a rollover allowed? No, there isn't. And it does expire on the 5th of April 2026, as it does every year. And this is £20,000 of tax-free compounding space. And if you don't use it by the 5th of April, it disappears permanently. It does not accumulate, it resets every year. And that annual reset is one of the quiet structural gates in the UK system. And most people barely think about it. Okay, let's look at the wider tax landscape 2025-26. Here is the environment your money sits inside with the 2025-26 core tax structure. You have personal allowance of £12,570, basic rate tax at 20%, higher rate tax at 40%, dividend allowance £500, capital gains tax allowance £3,000, and your ISA allowance of £20,000. Now, notice something important. Dividend allowance has shrunk sharply in recent years. And yes, capital gains tax allowance has shrunk sharply too. Personal allowance is frozen, but ISA allowance has not shrunk. And that means taxable investing has become structurally tighter. The ISA wrapper, you see, has become relatively more powerful. That's not just opinion, it's arithmetic. So what does an ISA actually do? Well, as I said, it's not an investment, it is a tax wrapper. Think of it as a protective shell around your capital. Inside the ISA, dividends are not taxed, capital gains are not taxed, interest is not taxed. Withdrawals usually don't affect income tax. But outside of an ISA, dividends above £500 may well be taxed. Gains above £3,000 may be taxed. Income can affect your tax band. And reporting may be required. You see, an ISA does not increase growth, it removes drag. And over 30 years, drag matters. Let's look at an example. Someone aged 28 with the same £20,000, but a different structure in each. And I think this helps make it absolutely clear. Instead of splitting the money into two different amounts, we compare exactly the same starting figure. So we have Emma, who is 28. She invests £20,000, the same amount, same investment, same market return. The only difference is where it sits. Assume the investment earns 7% per year before tax. Now, £20,000 inside versus outside of an ISA over 10 years. From this table, you can see inside an ISA at 7%, your 10-year value is £39,343. But outside of an ISA after tax drag, it's 5.5% and is only £34,169 after 10 years. So there's a structural gap there of £5,174, not to be sniffed at. We started, didn't we, with exactly the same £20,000. The ISA compounds at the full 7%, but outside the ISA, we assume the effective return falls to around 5.5% after dividend tax and occasional capital gains tax reduce reinvestment. After 10 years, the ISA is ahead by £5,174, not because of better investing, but because of structure. Now, stretch that to 20 years. So that, again, look at this table showing £20,000 inside versus outside ISA over 20 years. Inside an ISA at 7%, the 20-year value has gone up to £77,394,000. But outside of an ISA, after tax drag and 5.5%, Emma would only receive £58,920. Her structural gap is £18,474. That's the same starting money, the same assumed market return, the same discipline, nearly £18,500 difference. Nothing dramatic happened. There was no crash, no speculation, no bad decisions, just small annual tax drag, compounding quietly. Now, imagine repeating that ISA positioning year after year for 25 or 30 years. That's when the snowball becomes powerful. And it's why small percentages become large differences, because compounding is exponential. At 1 to 1.5% annual drag sounds minor, doesn't it? But over 25 to 30 years, it significantly slows the growth curve. Positive compounding accelerates wealth. Tax drag slows acceleration. Structure determines which curve you ride. Okay, let's move on to another example. We've got a mid-career person, and we have Daniel, who is 40 years old, and Daniel has £50,000 invested in dividend-paying shares. His dividend yield is 4%. That means the portfolio produces £50,000 times 4%. That's £2,000 per year in dividends. Now, let's compare structure. Same portfolio, same companies, same dividend income. Only difference is where it sits. And the inside versus outside ISA with its annual impact, you can see inside an ISA, annual dividends are £2,000 and tax nil. Net reinvested £2,000. But outside of an ISA with a higher rate taxpayer, you have £2,000, which is £506.25 tax, and reinvested only £1,493.75. You see, here's how the tax is calculated outside the ISA. You have the dividend allowance of £500, taxable portion £1,500, and dividend tax at 33.75% is £506.25. So each year, £506.25 is removed from compounding. That is structural drag. And what happens over time? If that £506.25 were reinvested, instead of paid in tax, it would compound too. Over 10 years, you have 10 years cumulative tax paid of £5,062.50. That's over £5,000 removed from compounding. But the real impact is bigger, because that £5,000 would also have earned returns. So the true structural gap is not just the tax paid, it's the lost growth on the tax paid, isn't it? Same investment, same yield, same risk, different location, different long-term wealth path. And why does this example matter? In your 20s, structure is about building a runway. In your 40s, structure is about protecting acceleration. As income rises, dividend tax increases, exposure increases, drag increases, and structure becomes more important, not less. Let's look at the April the 5th structural gate. Every tax year ends on the 5th of April at midnight. Then allowances reset. And your tax year ISA allowance would show us this. For 2025-26, £20,000. And for 2026-27, £20,000 for each individual year. If you use £6,000 of it in the tax year, so in 2025-26, you don't get £34,000 next year. That unused ISA allowance disappears permanently. You only get the £20,000, you see. And this is the quiet annual gate most people ignore. So why this matters early is if you're in your 20s, 30s or 40s, your biggest asset is time. Time magnifies structure. Every ISA year used expands your tax-free runway. It reduces long-term friction, protects future compounding, simplifies reporting. The ISA decision doesn't feel exciting, but it snowballs. Where does retirement fit? Later in life, structure becomes protective, but the real advantage was built decades earlier. Retirement outcomes are usually the result of earlier positioning. Structure compounds long before retirement arrives. And the core wealth principle is not about chasing 0.2% higher interest. Oh no, it is about asset location, lifetime tax efficiency, compounding runway, structural positioning. Two households can invest the same amounts, earn the same returns, and take similar risks, and still diverge massively over 30 years, because one aligned with structure and one ignored it. That divergence snowballs quietly. So now you understand that money doesn't just grow, it grows within architecture, and architecture compounds. And if you understand that early, you don't need dramatic strategies. You need structural discipline. That is how money really works. I hope this video was useful to you, and if it was, please would you subscribe and like so you can be sure of receiving notifications about my future videos. And if you think someone else could well use this information, please would you share it with someone that you care about. I'm Angie. I'll see you all again very soon. Have a lovely day. Bye.